Devil May Cry 5 is one of those few once in a generation titles that really needs to be played to be believed. After 6 years in the shadow of a failed reboot, that being DMC Devil May Cry 5 returns to the series' original continuity while making a massive leap forward visually from where Devil May Cry 4 left things off. This game released a few months after Capcom released the critically acclaimed Resident Evil 2, and these two games seem to foreshadow a string of highly successful releases for the publisher. Devil May Cry 5 reaches such a spectacular visual quality bar without sacrificing story and gameplay, and has the greatest combat system to ever be achieved. Full spoilers ahead. Devil May Cry 5 follows Nero, Dante, and V as they try to kill the new Demon King Urizen. It's about as simple as that. Devil May Cry masquerades as an epic story, but tends to be more about familial affairs than it does about saving the world. One of the best examples of this is the entire plot of Devil May Cry 3 being about how families can hurt each other even worse because they are family, not in spite of it. While the reveal of Urizen and V actually being two halves of Virgil isn't exactly surprising, bringing Virgil back always seemed like the logical endpoint of at least this saga of the Devil May Cry franchise. Not only is it strongly, and I mean strongly, implied that Nero is at least related to Virgil in Devil May Cry 4, but having Virgil, quote, die in Devil May Cry 1, only to be fleshed out further in 3, is a bit of a weird way to go about the whole thing. Plus, it's not like things were resolved between Virgil and Dante beforehand. While the narrative itself lacks a bit of meat to the bones, with Nero's arc mostly consisting of him having an inferiority complex and Dante completing his character arc that began in 3, the final stretch of the game is nothing short of excellent. I would argue Virgil is the greatest rival character in video game history, and the weight of his return is handled expertly. The way Dante breaks it to Nero that Virgil is his father is one of the best acted scenes in the franchise, and his final fight is a success on all fronts. Gameplay, music, set piece, writing, everything exceeds expectations. A lot of people walked away from Devil May Cry 4 with a mixed opinion of Nero, and while I liked him in that game, this game did wonders for his character. It doesn't abandon the plot threads from 4, but rather builds on them, culminating in this massive explosion at his deadbeat father at the end of the game. One of the few franchises to really stick the landing in its final moments, and it makes me excited to see where they go from here. The character themes also go a long way in characterizing everybody, and it helps that they play during every standard fight so you can get a sense of what's in every character's heads. Devil May Cry 5 has an incredible combat system. One I have spent hours upon hours messing around with, and I'm not even especially good at it. I'll talk about V first. While I enjoy the idea of a puppet character in a hack and slash, I think the playstyle doesn't really gel with me. V's gameplay consists of mostly backing off and letting your puppets do the work while you get to do the final hit, which is often satisfying. Unfortunately, combos aren't super interesting because of V's relatively limited move pool, resulting in a combat loop that ends up feeling more repetitive than it does satisfying. Still, V isn't a total failure. His puppets are all direct references to Devil May Cry 1 bosses, even using a good chunk of those bosses' moves. While definitely the weakest of the 4 characters in terms of satisfying gameplay, it is undeniable that V is a lot of fun to play as, and I hope they continue to experiment with this playstyle in the future. One of my primary criticisms with Devil May Cry as a franchise is that the combat system felt unapproachable and overcomplicated, especially in 1 and 3, where the game didn't tell the player a whole lot about how things worked. In 4, Nero's gameplay ends up as something of a response to that criticism, with Nero only having one weapon set as opposed to Dante's limitless combinations. Nero retains this status, sporting some new moves but largely the same moveset. His moveset does end up feeling a bit like you are just going through the motions, but that's where the robot arms come in. The sheer variety and creativity with some of these, from riding on your robot arm like a skateboard to just shooting a massive laser out of your arm, Nero can have some genuinely wild combinations that I am not capable of showing off. Virgil's gameplay remains largely the same as he was in Devil May Cry 4, but turned up to 11. New moves, new super moves, crazy teleporting. Is there nothing he can't do? Well, he doesn't have the same variety as Dante does, but he makes up for it by being super satisfying. Judgment Cut is one of those moves that looks cool in any context, while also requiring strict enough timing that it feels cool to pull off. Having the ability to spawn a clone is something that opens up a lot of combo opportunities, and his Sin Devil Trigger feels like an insta-win button. Just a super fun character to run around and kill stuff as. Dante feels a bit like a study in how far can we go before this breaks. He has so many unique weapons, each with their own unique moveset, not to mention the style switching that adds moves onto the already massive move list. And you've got a recipe for, well, a lot of recipes. No two combos are going to be the same, and while you can get into a rhythm with Dante, no two people are going to develop the same habits. Nero being playable before Dante actually helps quite a bit with this, as Nero allows the player to better understand the way the combat system feels before the sheer amount of combinations available to Dante is dumped onto the player. Devil May Cry 5's combat system is enhanced by its enemy variety. While most enemies end up as combo fodder one way or another, it's the method of getting to that combo that is more satisfying. Closing distances, flashing swords, teleporting through projectiles, all of it is fun to figure out. The bosses are also incredibly satisfying. Their movesets complement the game's mechanics quite well in most instances, and it's just fun to fight enemies in this game. Lots of action games suffer from their enemies not being fun to fight, but this game has that problem solved in spades. The level design is also spectacular. I wasn't a big fan of the puzzles in previous DMC games, and while I will say that the levels are pretty linear, they make up for this by providing excellent set pieces and visual design. While things do end up looking a bit samey near the end, the change in mood as you reach the top of the tree makes the climax even more satisfying. In an industry filled with over-monetized games and buggy releases, DMC5 feels refreshing. The return of one of gaming's most iconic franchises, combined with such a high quality bar, puts a lot of other games on notice, and I can't wait to see where Capcom takes this series next. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and next time we're going to be talking about one of the biggest releases in the past decade. And yeah, I'm really excited for that, and I'll see you on Wednesday.